All right. Good morning, everyone. Today we have Ronnell. I'm really excited. I'm a special speaker who I met physically at Benefits Pro in Colorado. But I think you've made quite the splash on Facebook media. You're in a lot of the ACA groups. You're very active at helping respond to people. If you see, I think I've seen it numerous times. Hey, click here to report fraud, and some of that stuff. So I was like, I gotta get Ronnell on. And so we got a chance to talk face to face in Colorado at the Benefits Pro. And this woman's just a plethora of information. And I was really excited when she said she would join and talk about some stuff. So we're gonna talk about basic stuff first. I know you all want to talk about the fraud stuff, but we'll get to that, I promise. So, Ronnell, how long have you been in the insurance world?
Well, honestly, I hate to say this, but it's the truth. Since I was 18 years old. So it's been a very long time. It's the only thing that I know. I started working for an insurance company, typing claim checks manually. If that will
Wow.
just give you a a bit of information, hopefully not too much about my age, but it's been a while.
Oh, I sometimes I still miss typewriters where I just need to put one thing. Once Adobe came out with editing, then I don't need my typewriter anymore. So what is, I guess, your favorite part about health insurance? Because you've been in it a long time and you've seen the changes. I mean, what part is your like, yes, we're this is the best part about the health insurance world?
Yeah, I would say that very interesting for me because I started, as an insurance as a person working in an insurance company. Then I decided I wanted to be an agent, and then I decided I wanted to be a lobbyist. Then I decided I wanted to, own a trade association, and I think that's where I finally decided I was in love when I could figure out how legislation and how politics and how politicians could help us as agents and brokers survive in this industry. When I figured that out, I still love to help people, and I still have a small book of business, so I'll write some ACA. But where one time I had a therapist say, "Where are you the happiest?" And I said, "On the floors of Capitol Hill, walking, and knocking on doors. That's where I'm the happiest. And that's where I think I can bring more to the table on health insurance."
Well, and you are helping people. I mean, you're not helping them necessarily individually one to one. You're doing stuff that might affect large groups. So I think that's awesome. And we definitely need people who want to be there, right? And not punch people when they're there. I saw that yesterday after your comment where people were like, "Oh, I would have been able to handle it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not going to win friends and influence people. You got to be nice, right?"
Right.
So yeah, so that's awesome. I mean, you've seen it all, which is you bring to the hill a plethora of that information, the discuss, you know what it was like to put in the claim forms and how it works now, and hopefully make it better, right? So I wanted
Right.
to know, what is one, like a moment that you were on Capitol Hill or talking to somebody in legislation where you saw them get it? Like, okay, like what was it that made somebody who's, they have a million things being thrown at them, right? Millions of rules and changes, and people are trying to, they're getting pulled in all these different directions. What was it that you were speaking to them that made them go, "Oh, I get what you're trying to say"? Was it rules? Was it a personal story? Like, what was it that helped them light bulb?
Well, I do things a little bit different. And people on the call that do not know me, because I see some of my friends, you'll know that I do not march to the normal drum beat. So when I go to Washington, I bring a group of agents. It might be 5 to 10, not a whole lot. And we meet before we go into our office, and we talk about what are the topics we want to, take on. And then each person tells their own story. So when that legislator hears the story from their respective state or from one of their neighboring state, I had a consumer that was hurt by this, or this law was, passed, and it helped my person, or whatever it might be. It's telling the personal stories from our agents and brokers who are helping the clients in their respective states or the states that they're licensed.
So it's the story, right? It's not don't do this and don't do that. It's here's the story of how a person's being affected.
And I do things also a little different, and I share this with some folks. Some folks have heard it before, and it's called a stalking method. And what I do is I stalk the legislator or stalk the CMS person until they become my friend. And you're going to be my friend eventually. If I have to come to your house and knock on the door, you're going to be my friend. So when you go to Washington, D.C., and I stick my arms out because I want to hug everybody, and you see some of those people like kind of back up a little bit, like, I'm not sure I want to be hugged by this crazy lady. I bring them in, I hug them. I'm like, we're going to be friends because you're going to help my industry and I'm going to help you. So I try to be loving. I love them to death.
Which is, I mean, the more kind you are and the more angry they are, it's going to show, right? So of course, if you're responding with anger, they're just going to go back, right? And eventually
Right.
they
They're going
have
to
to
shut
slow
down.
it down, right?
They're going
So
to
no,
shut
I think
down.
that's great. So how long has HAFA, I guess, been around? When did that start?
So it was November 2012, and I was actually lobbying for another association. There was a bill in Louisiana that said insurance companies were going to stop paying commissions. And of course, that raised my tentacles, and I was like, I can't wait to go to the Capitol and kill this bill. And I was told I couldn't fight this bill because it had to do with commissions. I couldn't go to the Capitol. I couldn't do anything. So I quit that day. I started HAFA November 2012. Within a week, we had a board. And within a week, we had killed that bill and then killed it the next year. It never even got to committee. So insurance companies, so sad, you still have to pay us. But it just, it was about the fact that agents and brokers needed someone to represent them exclusively. So HAFA doesn't have, carriers on our board, doesn't have carriers as members. That's just agents and brokers. So the work commission is not a scary thing. I think that we deserve to be paid. Why, no other industry in the world is asked to work for free, and we shouldn't either.
Agreed. And I don't understand, because we would like to get paid for our work, why we became the enemy. It's like, that makes no sense. Like, I
Absolutely.
mean, I don't know what the New York agents do because they don't get paid for helping
It breaks
people.
my
And so I'm like,
heart. It breaks my
yeah,
heart.
I'm like, you're asking people to either just do it out of their, because they feel good for free, or let people do it themselves. And as we know, the industry doesn't understand insurance. Heck,
Right.
not all agents understand insurance. So if we as agents don't understand it, how is the consumer supposed to understand this? So,
Yeah,
so
and for
you're,
those that don't know, Christina,
yeah,
when there was a part of time where we were not being paid for SEPs, and
yep.
we are now, that, and I hate to toot my own horn because I'm nothing special, but that was me. That was absolutely me. I beat CMS over the head for years. So it was not overnight. I was actually in Cancun, and CMS called and said, Ronnell, can you get to a place where you get internet? Because we're going to have a call and we're going to announce something that you've been working on. And that's when they announced they were going to pay for SEPs. So it doesn't mean that you're special. It means that you don't give up, that you're a bulldog like behind me, and you just keep fighting and keep, asking for the right things, and being paid, being asked to be paid is not a bad thing.
Correct. It's not. And I don't know if everybody's connection was weird like mine was, but um that SCP in my state that we're not getting paid was started by the United Healthcare. It was year 2, but it was so under the radar. And I was like, what? And so in some ways, I'm glad there was 3 big giant carriers who suddenly said that, because that gave you the power to go there and go, so thank you. And it's okay to toot your own horn.
Every once in a while, I always say if I'm killed by a drive-by, it's either United Healthcare or CMS. So all of y'all know if something bad happens, you might have to testify.
Hey, sign me up, right? And I think you're right. I don't remember if it was you or whoever we were trying to, one of our biggest issues as agents and the brokers is helping CMS differentiate us from call centers, right? Like, we are not a call center. Stop comparing us to call centers. And said, send documentation showing that you helped your client. So I sent, because I think we could send 5 pages worth. I sent 5 pages worth of customer service thank yous to separate ourselves. So what is it that agents here, brokers, can do to help? What involvement can they do? What does CMS need to see? Where can they go to say, hey, I'm a broker helping individuals. Where can I go to help CMS understand that?
I would say that CMS likes to work through their trade groups. So I'm a member of a trade call with NABIP and Big I and NAFA and PIA. So we all get together. They like you to work through us. So if you have something that you'd like to share, you know, we know where to go. This morning at 6:30, I received an email from CMS saying, hey, did you do this in Mississippi? Well, of course, maybe I did. I'm not going to say that. And then all day yesterday during the meet and greet, when things were out of control, I was being texted by CMS the whole time. Ronnell, what do you think about this? So know that we have a seat at the table and use us. So, whatever, you don't want to be a member of HAFA, no problem. Be a member of somebody and feed your information to them and let them report for you.
Do you think,
And then go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say, because you're part of one group and you just mentioned there's like 4 of them, right? Do you feel that for the most part, you're all in the same agreement of the type of legislation that should be changed, or do you feel like there's differentiations between?
I think overall we're pretty much on the same table. I will say there are some associations that I sit at the table with all the time and we work hand in hand, and some not. Some will tell you flat out they don't agree with the way that I go about things. That I'm in their face. I'm gonna fly to Washington tomorrow if you called me and said we have a problem. So it's a little bit different the way that I handle it.
Sure.
But overall, I would think that we were all fighting for agents and brokers, and we all should be doing the same thing. We just might have a little bit different ways of doing it.
Correct. And I think there's no one way, right?
No.
That's why we're brokers, because there's no one way.
And sometimes you need all ways.
Correct.
Sometimes you need every way.
And we were just talking about that. Sometimes it's multiple points of attack. One is doing it from this way, one's doing it this way, and finally it all comes together because they're seeing it from different perspectives. So no, I
Right.
think that's great. Besides the unscrupulous agents and call centers out there, what do you guys have for questions for somebody who's basically with legislation? Because we'll get to that, but I want to, not get the whole meeting just talking about fraud agents. So if you have somebody's ear, what is it you want CMS to know about? What is it that questions you guys have?
Yeah, happy to answer anything. I think I might have put myself in a pickle this morning. I was working with Louisiana fraud, and somehow I think I got a date with somebody that I was trying to get them to go after a fraudulent agent. So just know I'll do anything for y'all. I don't even know what this person looks like, but I think I'm having po' boys next week.
Going down to New Orleans. I mean, if you guys don't have questions, this is your chance. I mean, me personally, the biggest thing is getting CMS to understand that I know that the government, in theory, is trying to do what's best for their constituents, right? Whether it's CMS, which again, they're being pulled, ACA is not their only book of business. They got Medicare and group and a whole bunch of Medicaid systems, is to talk to agents and stop viewing us as enemies, right? Like, just let us have a seat at the table, because while they're in theory up here trying to figure out what's good for people down here, but they're not talking to the people down here. And what CMS said yesterday, what I was talking to somebody else, that they think as agents, we're doing a bad job because we're not showing the silver plans, or at least they think we're not, right? Because the mass amount of people are enrolled in bronze plans. But if they would just talk to me, I would say, well, here, I'm showing the side by side, a $0 deductible plan or a $5,000 silver. And this one's $200 a month less. I think if they saw that, they would go, oh, like the light bulb would come on, right? So,
You would hope.
You would
You would
hope,
hope.
right? That, I mean, I get paid the same, bronze, silver, or gold, right? I have no vested interest at all in what plan people take. I just show them their options, and it's very clear, right? No, not every state has that, and not always, but I think, there's a reason people are in the bronze plans. When they talk to agents, I think it actually shows that the fact that the majority of people are in bronze plans when they talk to agents, CMS should go, well, why is that? They do get paid the same. Isn't a silver supposed to be better? And we could show them. So that's my biggest thing, is like, I just want them to, like,
Right. And
talk
I
to
mean,
us.
I really felt after the meetup yesterday, and I said it in our breakout session at the end, is that we stepped back 12 years. So in the beginning of the ACA, CMS was putting out all these webinars for navigators to use, saying agents and brokers, that they were unbiased, we were biased, we only sold one insurance company. It was insane. So I worked very hard for them to understand the value we bring to the industry. And then the comments yesterday kind of threw me off as, y'all need to improve, y'all need to get better. However, we have enrolled more than 80% of the folks that have been enrolled. Number two, you're saying we're not providing quality service, which we are, because obviously we enrolled 80% of the people. So what was being said really upset me. And I have told them, you do not know what we do. You have no idea. You've never met an agent. You have no idea. Please come and sit down with a HAFA agent for a day, for an hour, and just see what they do. Get involved and find out why that person chose a bronze plan. Not that the agent sold the bronze plan, because the person picked the bronze plan because it was best for them. And CMS, their hair caught on fire because they were like, Ronnell, we do understand. Well, no, you don't.
Correct.
I
So
think
Andrew,
we see. There you are. I was looking for you.
yeah, Andrew, what you got?
There you go.
About the bronze versus silver, I noticed in the broker summit slides that CMS posted that they particularly flagged a high rate of bronze selection under 200% of poverty, which is where CSR is strong. And I know that there are reasons for not going with silver for people under 200 FPL too. And silver take-up has been declining. You would have thought after ARPA it would go up. It went up a little bit in 2022, but it's gone down since. So I wonder if that came up, if they questioned specifically about bronze selection under 200 FPL, and what your perspective is on that.
Well, and that's
Versus the
their thought
250, right?
process.
Yeah. So because there's three levels, right? The top level,
200 to 250 is so negligible that,
right.
But under 200,
Yeah.
big jump, and there's a big jump in out of pocket maximum.
Well, they assume everybody should be in silver regardless, without knowing. I was talking states earlier with Christina, but not even states. What about counties in Louisiana's parishes? The bronze could be zero and the silver could be 50, 75, $100. Yes, they get all the bells and whistles of a silver plan, but they don't have that money. They're poor. They're like, Ronnell, I want insurance, but I have to take the free plan. Or the silver plan doesn't cover their doctors. The bronze plan does. It's such a personalized decision that these folks deserve to pick whatever's right for them. The federal government shouldn't be picking it, and we shouldn't be picking it, which I don't think we do. So I argue with CMS that they have no clue what's going on with the boots on the ground with us, working in the industry.
So you didn't see them differentiating below 200, just everybody in general, silver versus bronze.
So
they think everybody should be in a silver.
Yeah, and I know that for people with more income, bronze usually makes more sense if the state doesn't have gold cheaper than silver, which is another issue. But they may also be thinking, you're talking about what good brokers do, and obviously got the problem with the call centers and the plan switching. And if there's 2 free silver plans and another 8 free bronze plans, that increased bronze incidence may be a sign of unauthorized plan switching too.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's the thing we don't know, right? I mean, I don't know, Ronnell, if you have a statistic, and we'll get to you in a second, Sharon, do they have an idea of that 80%? How many of that percent would be from the call centers versus the independent brokers?
I'm going to say, from my perspective, they have it. Will they give it to us? Absolutely not.
Okay.
They do not want me personally to leak anything to the media, which I would in a New York second.
Right.
I'm not even gonna lie about it. I would do it and they know I would do it. So there's information that they have, like how many people have complained about the plan changes. You know, that number
Right.
is so low and not even true.
Yes.
But they won't give any backup data for that either. But they had to give a number because Kaiser and the Wall Street Journal were coming after them. So
Yeah, when I saw that number and I'm like, I know more than that just on Marketplace, Mastery Group
thank you.
and
I mean,
ACA Group.
thank you. And it's not all the agents. You know, somebody said yesterday on Facebook, you know, Ronnell, it's not all Florida agents. It's not, but the majority of fraud is coming out of Florida, but they're committing the fraud in other states.
Right.
So the numbers are the numbers. I'm from our fraud reporting tab. I'm getting the forms. I know who's committing the fraud, and it's
Yeah.
repeat offenders, and they're coming out of Florida.
And I think it's also what if you look at how many people are enrolled in the Marketplace, Florida's number one. They just have the most. So of course, most of the fraud's going to be done in Florida. I mean, I've had 4 cases in Wisconsin, you know, but my state's in the middle. It's not. So Florida and Texas, it's going to be the most because they just have the most people. So, all right, Sharon, you had a question. What's your question? And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
Hey, lady.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a lot, everything that has been said so far. One of the things that you had mentioned about the bronze and the silver thing, I know I just did a lady the other day and she is 94% CSR, and most of the time silver makes sense for them. But with this person, they came to me, they have to get MRIs like every couple of months because of a disease that they have. And she said she's like out of pocket $3,000 every time. So generally in those cases, I don't just look at, is it a CSR? I look at what are the services that they're using. In her case, the bronze with the Aetna plan in my area was best for her because it was $750 for an MRI. And she and her daughter said, this is what we want. They had co-pays on every service that they use all the time. We looked at the other companies. Her doctors were not in any of the plans except one, but she wanted to keep her primary. So that plan had all the medications, all the doctors. So they said, this is what we want. And so
Right.
they said 750 was fine. But
Right, because they could do that cheaper, stretched out the bill longer, right?
exactly. Now, the other thing that I was writing questions down during that meeting yesterday. And one thing that they said is that the quality of enrollments by agents and brokers are not that good. I want to know, what do they mean by that? Because I think we
Yeah.
do pretty good. And then my question on that would basically be, is the quality independent brokers or is the quality people who are just writing applications? Because I'm not an application taker. I actually try to help the person, try to figure out what they need. But they just make blanket statements, but they don't say who it is. And
Right,
even
where'd
with
they get that? Yeah.
exactly. And even with the bronze silver plan thing, it makes a big difference whether it's the 94% or is it the 73%. Don't just say brokers are throwing everyone in bronze or gold or whatever instead of silver. You need to be a little bit more specific, because without the specifics, it does not, it comes to not really be true to a certain degree. So
Yeah,
they
Sharon,
need to really narrow it down.
you made
Yeah,
my
Ronnell, where'd they get that information, do you think, to say that?
well. I want to say, first of all, she just made a light bulb go over my head because CMS is coming to the HAFA Agent Summit in Washington, D.C. And there's going to be a panel there, and we are going to be asking them questions. And what a question to ask, but what would you quantify what quality means, that we're not providing quality service?
Right.
Thank you so much. That was worth waking up this morning, because that's going to be amazing, amazing question.
Good job, Sharon. Yeah.
But where they get their data from, you know, basically they look at the fact that, like I've said, everybody should be in the silver because that's what the federal government said. You know, everybody should have all the coverages that are in the ACA, because that's what the federal government said. So a lot of things do not make sense. And I mean, I've flown up to Washington so many times, had dinner with Jeff Grant that was on the call yesterday, and had some very candid conversations. And some of the conversations, you can see they have no clue what I'm talking about. It just does not compute. And it's because they're not in our industry. They're federal government workers. Yes, they work for CMS, but they're not agents and brokers. And they have not taken the opportunity to sit down and meet with us. Now, Dean Moe's amazing. I'm not sure if y'all have met him. He will be speaking at the conference. He does his best. And when the ACA was first released and CMS was being so rude towards agents and brokers, the then Ellen flew to Baton Rouge, and he met with me and he said, I'm going to hire someone that's going to make you happy. And that was in the beginning of the ACA, and he hired Dean. And from that day on, Dean has done his very best to represent us. He can't always do what I ask him, for our industry, but he is a good resource for us.
So I just had a moment, and this might be the problem with CMS. So when the Affordable Care Act first started and everything was based on the second cheapest silver plan, so those who don't know, the tax credit is adjusted to make the second cheapest silver plan in somebody's county for them. They add enough tax credit to make that originally 10% of the income. Now it's 8.5. And that's a whole different discussion, whether that's good or not. And so for a very long time, 90% of people did go into the silver plans because the bronze plans were a true traditional bronze. We are not paying for anything outside of your annual until you reach this high deductible. And then I think it was about 5 years ago, Molina in my state and many states came out with a $0 deductible bronze plan. They were one of the first, if not the first, that started this. And we had some people that took that because I went, oh my goodness, this is an advantage plan for under 65. The first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, copays. This is like what we've been asking for. You know what you're going to pay when you go. And since then, now Anthem has got them. United Healthcare's got them. I think every small independent company in my state except one has them. I don't know if CMS understands that the plans are getting better. So they may be still going off of 10-year-old stuff going, that's why this is bad. Because they're in their head, because the Affordable Care Act, when it was created in 2010, they were thinking bronze plans are good. Most people aren't going to take those bronze plans because they're high deductible. So that might be the other thing to show them. Just print off a side by side. Don't even have the dollar amount. Go, here's an option one with the $0 deductible, and then print a silver and go, which one would you pick? Look at, here's the copays.
Right.
And they may be completely on 10-year-old technology, or ideas.
Well, and take it a step forward, because I just had this conversation. Insurance companies are gaming the system. So they come into the network, they have a cheap price with no doctors, so they can be the second lowest silver. So the people can get that plan, that silver plan, for no dollars, let's say. However, there's not a single doctor, hospital, hundreds of miles around.
Right.
So
it's a really narrow network. Yeah.
There's no network. So I said, CMS, who is approving these networks? Because you're allowing insurance companies to come in and mess everything up, because they could have gotten a Blue Cross $0 last year, but now they can get a, and better for $0, but there's no doctors. And they're like, oh, well, we look at the networks and, or that's the state's, job, or, it's always some moving part. Or it's not happening. That's that's not happening. I'm like, I guarantee it is happening. So you have what you've said, in addition to they're allowing the insurance companies to come in, game the system, and mess up the whole market.
And my state is really good about that. Like I didn't even know how it was working. We had a carrier who continually skipped one of the counties that we're heavy in. And we're like, why aren't you in our county? And finally the carrier said, because our state says no, because you don't have a hospital in that county. So we are not going to let you put a plan there. Now, they weren't going to be a cheap plan because Wisconsin's weird with all our nonprofits, but it was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I'm like, you know what? That makes sense. You shouldn't be in a county that you don't have a hospital system in. But I didn't know that some states don't care, but I hear about it, right? Florida is one of those big ones. Texas, oh my goodness. I hope you like this one doctor because that's it.
Right,
CMS,
right.
and this does kind of go back on the carriers. You know, they can absolutely make wonderful contracts for every company that they have with their group policies and sell them in the marketplace. In fact, they could even raise the rates and everybody's rates would be the same, so the tax credit would be evenly spread out.
Right.
So
But
this is
CMS
also a
allows
carrier
them to,
issue.
yeah, CMS allows them to be in the
Yeah.
market. So they pay to be in the federal marketplace. They pay. CMS should have some rules. And then if you try to pass legislation
Yeah.
in your respective state, the carriers fight because they do not want, you know, network adequacy legislation. So then you can't get anything passed in your state. So your state can't step up. So the government won't step up. You can't pass any legislation and the consumers lose.
And this is the Buca company. So this is the Uniteds, the Ambetters, the ones that make profit and they control the market. So this is another reason if you want to get involved, that you get involved at the state level and at the federal level. So I know a lot of us want to talk about the whole agency fraud. So if you can go through, I guess, when you first started noticing it as a little issue, when it grew to a big issue, and then what you're doing. I know you've got places people can report, and we've used it for the 4 in Wisconsin that we've had to deal with. You know, I guess go with that, and then, you know, what you see potentially happening. I mean, I know CMS is very tight-lipped because heaven forbid they commit to fixing this,
Right.
but, you know, kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, after open enrollment, we saw that the fraud and abuse was rampant and horrible, is that's what I'm going to say. I said it to Medicarians, and I got in trouble by CMS for saying that. It is what it is. So one of my board members, Lauren Jenkins out of Oklahoma, said, Ronnell, we have got to have a reporting tool because agents and brokers do not know how to report. They don't know what to do. Hence the numbers that CMS is saying that they you know, corrected. Folks didn't know what to do. So we created a fraud reporting tool on our website that anybody can use. You don't have to be a HAFA member. It was more important to combat fraud. So the first thing I did is I said, look, all this fraud is coming out of Florida. So let me go to Florida, being naive. Let me go to Florida because certainly I can talk to the Department of Insurance, their fraud department. We can fix all this. Well, every day I learned something new. I met with them, very open, very willing to help. But they said, Ronnell, you have to prosecute in the state that the fraud occurred. Okay, so I learned something new that day. So Florida says, look, we will pull their residence license if those respective states will pull the non-residence license. Okay, that makes sense. So I'm in Louisiana and Department of Fraud, I could walk there. So I said, let me try this, test this in Louisiana. So I brought them some cases. And as I started working with them, they said, okay, Ronnell, fine to report it, which we're all doing. We're using, you know, the HAFA reporting tool. It's going to the NAIC, CMS, Department of Fraud. It's doing what it's supposed to do. But you guys have to build a case. If you want us to prosecute somebody, pull their license, you've got to build a case. So then they came up with, it would be amazing if you could get an affidavit signed and notarized by the agent, by the client. Now, sometimes hard by the client because most of them are, you know, lower income. They may not have that possibility, but maybe you call and you record their call like CMS would. You know, what exactly happened? You have them write something else out. You have to build the case because Louisiana, Florida, and Texas all said, Ronnell, we want to prosecute. We want to arrest some people. Give us the information. And I'm sure y'all
putting it on. They're putting it on you but they're putting it on you and or the agent to build the case. They're not going to go build the case themselves.
They can't because where would they get the information, right?
Right. Okay.
So if you think about it, I mean, it's always like this learning process. The head's always churning. If you think about it, it's like you're prosecuting someone, but you're really giving it to the fraud department to do it. So you need to print out, if you use Health Sherpa, print out the form that history that shows what happened to your client, who took your client, what day they took your client, provide that to the fraud department. So just giving as much information you can. The coup de grace is whether you can get the affidavit. That's kind of the best case scenario. But doing all the other things, which is easy as pie, you can do that. you could provide to your fraud departments. So have Louisiana working on that. They're working on some of these repeat offenders that I know y'all have seen the same names over and over and over. They're working on some of those folks. So I'm thinking we can get them pulled in Louisiana and cut the head off the snake in some places that maybe some of the others will start paying attention. I'm not sure. And then I started hearing a lot of bad things out of Texas. Texas told one client that their good agent was the bad agent. And the client got all upset. They couldn't get their mental health drugs. It was just a mess. So I had enough. I had been trying to reach out to Texas. Texas was not responding. So I asked my contact in Louisiana, can you connect me with someone? So I finally got someone who understood. They looked at our website. We were on a Zoom. He looked at everything we were doing. He even gave us some suggestions, said Texas absolutely wants to prosecute. They were not as aggressive as Florida and Louisiana, but okay. But
that kind of sounds like
in,
Texas. I mean, to be
yeah,
true,
so,
that's Texas.
They're like, oh, we don't want to get the farm direct, but he was taking our form back to his boss, gonna send me back a date and time that I could fly over. Because as I've said, I will fly the next day anywhere I need to go. And so I'm waiting for Texas to respond. So the bottom line is that it is happening everywhere. Is it everybody in Florida? No. Are they committing fraud all over the United States? Yes. It's a small percentage of bad actors, call centers that are committing the fraud. There's a lawsuit out of Florida, a huge lawsuit that they are going after some call centers.
Yeah,
there's a lot of whistleblowers that have worked with call centers that are giving proof about what has happened. We have a DC attorney who is working really close with that lawsuit and trying to decide, what we should do as HAFA. We met with CMS, my attorney and we kind of softball asked, hey, what would you think if we just did a friendly lawsuit? We just sued you. You're hurting the consumers. What do you think about it? And I would just say that wasn't a good thing. They got pretty upset. But we just wanted to know, hey, maybe you need to be sued because you need to have that backing to do something. Maybe you need somebody to push you. We didn't know.
I do think it's going to happen if they don't do something, because it's going to go to Health Sherpa, right? They're going to blame Health Sherpa or Insura, and they're going to go, no, we're bound by CMS. So the lawsuit's going to go to CMS if they don't fix it. And it's not even from agents. I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, there's going to be a lawyer who's smart, who's going to get a whole bunch of people who've been affected by this. And
yeah, I mean, it's definitely happened. There's some things we're doing behind the scenes politically that if they paid attention and just blew this up to show all the consumers that are being hurt, that maybe we could get some traction. So there's some things happening. I am meeting with Health Sherpa this afternoon. Speaking of Health Sherpa, George, the owner, CEO, wants to meet with me about something that he's going to propose about doing. So CMS is blaming, I'm not sure if it's CMS or if it's their call center. But if you make a call to the call center, they will absolutely say either the agent did it or Health Sherpa did it. Yep. So I don't know if that's their talking points, but if you call with your client, I promise you that will happen. I've been on calls when it did happen, but
it's been trickled down, right? And because I hear agents going, oh, don't use Health Sherpa, they're the ones who are doing this, and we're like, no. They're just an enrollment platform. This could happen anywhere. So yes, and it is the call centers. And when you call healthcare.gov and they say, well, where did you enroll? And they say Health Sherpa. I don't know if they're just taking it upon themselves, those call center people, because they've just heard the name Health Sherpa so much that they're blaming Health Sherpa. But you're right. And
yeah,
I know you were at Medicarian. I was talking to Andy Daster and he was there and he said, Health Sherpa says, we have a thing. All we have to do is click a button and that certification, verification will happen, but we're waiting for CMS. So I don't know what CMS is waiting for. Like, what is CMS waiting for? Like,
okay, so here's the crystal ball. I think this was the first question. Crystal ball is CMS is not going to do anything. Unless they are politically forced to. They're not going to do anything. They've already told me nothing will happen before open enrollment. They're working on things. Okay?
Well, that I knew. Yeah.
Yeah, that's baloney, whatever. We've got to handle this from a grassroots, bottom up, where we're reporting, we're building the case, we're giving to the fraud department, and the fraud departments are taking these people down. Because I asked CMS, I said, here's Mr. I won't say his name, but Mr. whatever, and he is committing fraud all over the United States.
Yep.
You see his name every time. Pull his license, pull his certification. You're giving him the right to hurt people. And they said, well, we really can't do that because it's not really him. I said, I don't care if it's him or somebody using his NPN. You turn off that NPN, that will stop that fraud, that call center, that, that snake. We can't do that. We don't have enough evidence. Well, honey, I have enough evidence.
Yeah.
So if they won't and they
He's
can't,
allowing his NPN to be used this way. It's a call center. Like,
yeah. So, I'm just saying, get involved.
Yeah.
Take a stand. I get so mad because I see these people on Facebook saying, oh, forget about that person you lost. You're just not busy enough and you need to find some more clients. And I want to pull my hair out because I believe we care about our clients. And I believe we care whether they lost their coverage, they can't get their medicine, they're in the middle of cancer treatment, they're trying to get a transplant. I think we care, and I believe in that. So to say we don't care, I think it's more we don't know what to do. So HAFA's trying to say, look, you didn't know what to do. Now we're teaching you what to do. You report it. It tells you on the website, step by step by step, what you need to do. And then you always, as Christina said in the beginning, you have me. I don't care if you're not a HAFA member. Go send me an email. I'll send you a calendar link. You pick a time. I'll Zoom with you. I'll talk to you about anything. I don't really care. That's what I dedicated my life to, is helping agents and brokers.
And I do think that CMS doesn't want to do it. Fine. Give Sherpa permission to do it. Just give them permission, right? Put it back on them because they'd be happy to do it. So I know,
but Sherpa doesn't want to do it without CMS saying everybody has to do it.
Right. But
the bad eggs are just going to go to another
enrollment platform. Yeah. Kitchi, I saw you had your hand up.
Hi, yes. So regarding, okay, I get it. They don't care about agents, but have you ever thought about looking at the cost in terms of a client being in a wrong plan? Because that incurs cost, not just to CMS, but to the carriers. If you put a client, let's say this client has a lot of healthcare needs, it's higher level, and then they're in the wrong plan. So what's going to happen is that this will incur. So that amount of money lost, maybe that's other way that we can show it, and then we lump ourselves in that one, because I noticed that if you don't show it from the point of view for the client side, they wouldn't care.
You are spot on, and you are spot on with my attorney in DC, because that's what he says. We need to start quantifying the money, what money is being attributed or lost. So you were spot on to his thought process.
That's how they're gonna look bad. But if they are just trying to screw agents, they don't seem to look bad. But I just want to say something real quick, because yesterday I was there at the meetup also. So they brought up that CSR, and they also brought up the immigrants. But for the CSR, for the silver versus bronze, my suggestion is to go back at them and tell them to get more data, because they have the data. So everybody pick bronze. They want to know why. I mean, they have the data. We can give them 1C, 2C data from what happened, what we did, but they have it. If they pull it, they will understand what are the diagnoses of the clients. How much money do they have? Why are they attracted more to the bronze, which has a lower premium? Because they can't afford the silver premium. They're not going to think about that, because premium is what you pay the carrier, whether you're going to use the plan or not. And if they're fairly healthy, it doesn't make sense to pay a higher premium, especially the young ones, and not utilize the cert. If they're just going to go to the doctor once a year, I can see that. So they have that data. If you tell them, you can pull all that and you can see. Now, when you tell us what it is, we can approach it with several angles. Is it really a broker issue, or is it the plan? well, you have to understand between the two, even if they can afford it by the percentage that we mentioned, that they could be able to afford it. We don't know what are they buried in debts, So
Exactly.
that's my suggestion, because they have that data. They can pull it from IRS, they can put them all together. They have analysts that hire. And before they showed to us that graph, there's several graphs that they come up with, and they're just making us explain things. So yeah.
Thank you. And I wrote that down for a question at the HAFA Summit. So thank you.
All right, Sharon, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, there was one thing that I did want to ask, because in our contract, it does say that if we breach the contract, that we could be suspended. And I did kind of understand what they were saying yesterday, that they don't want to just terminate a broker just because they think they might have done something when they really haven't. But why can't they suspend people that they are seeing? I mean, some of these people we're seeing like hundreds of times in the group, same exact name. I don't understand why they can't suspend them and then make them, prove that they're not guilty.
Or
Because
at least suspend them while the investigation is happening, right?
exactly. And it's like they can continue to do whatever they're doing. And I just don't understand that. The other thing, which I asked the question yesterday, but they didn't really answer the question, because on healthcare.gov, I was under the impression that they just didn't have the technology to do two-factor authentication. On healthcare.gov itself, on the consumer side, they have two-factor authentication. So any consumer that creates an account can activate that. The problem is not on the consumer side going in to do an application on their own. It's not with the call center healthcare.gov, because they have a worker portal. They can do whatever they want. The problem is on that agent broker access portal where we access healthcare.gov. I don't think there's any agent that would really have a problem taking an extra 5 to 10 seconds to click on a drop down to pick a document and ask the client for those numbers, just to prove that we did speak to that person. And that's why I always say that for me, it's inexcusable, because they have the technology. If you can do it on the front end, I really want them to explain to me why you can't do it on the back end. All the independent agents are screaming for it. We've been screaming for it, not just in this CMS meeting. There was a CMS virtual meeting about 2 or 3 years ago. That is actually when the agents started talking about this. So this isn't something new. It's just exploded, because every time the agents talk about it, they say, we'll take that back and we'll talk about it. We don't know what happens in that back room, but they have known about this for 3 years. They're talking now because we're pointing the finger at them and they can't hide anymore. So
It's partly because of the low income thing. When Biden did that, to me, that was actually, for me, it's an issue. I know how other people feel, but that's when the call centers could manipulate the system. So while it was an issue before, it wasn't taken advantage of because you couldn't switch people around mid-year, right? You couldn't report a 13,000 income, even though they make 113,000. So if they put, I mean, that's one of the few things that if they put that back, this would eliminate a lot of this issue, except during open enrollment, where they'd have some computer system trying to enroll people on December 31st at 12.
So Sharon, let me make 2 comments to what you said. Number one, about suspending. I did talk to Dean about that, and Dean said, okay, Ronnell, what if somebody falsely accused you? You didn't do anything wrong, but they did, and we suspended you and you couldn't do business during that time. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. We have to be really careful. Now, these people that are repeat offenders, I think that's a no-brainer. So that should be simple as pie. And then the next part you were talking about, oh God, what's the next part, Christina? It was the
two-factor authentication.
Oh, two-factor. Yes. So I have said to them over and over and over, why can't you do the two-factor authentication? And, they have, just like, you've been there forever. We've said it forever. They can do it. but does that affect their numbers? And they tell me, be careful what you ask for, Ronnell. Be careful what you wish for. And I keep saying exactly what you said.
Mhm.
The good agents and brokers, we will do the extra step. We will do what needs to be done to protect our clients. So your own. I just wanted to make the comment about the suspension.
Yeah, and just based on what you said, Ronnell, when I think about what they're saying, the good agents and brokers, we are contributing to their numbers. My question is, why are they so scared to do this? And how many of that big giant number is coming from these call centers or agents that are not doing the right thing? Because if you have numbers, if I have like a lot of big numbers, I would want it to be legitimate. I wouldn't
Right.
want it to come from something that's fraudulent. So
Right.
it just makes me wonder, especially like sometimes we'll see
You're not thinking
an
like a government
agent,
agent, Sharon.
we'll see a client that has like 200 agents. And these are things that we're seeing in some of the Facebook groups. So if it's one person, but they have 237 agents, how many applications do they have? How many enrollments do they have? So it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So,
All right, we're almost done. Andrew, you had a question?
Yeah, and then something tacked on in response to Sharon, the question about suspending people who are egregiously switching. Somebody who worked at Socio told me that, who had worked at Socio, they have due process hardwired in, and there would have to be intense pressure on CMS to change their protocols to suspend people more quickly. He said it would take a White House level intervention to make them move fast on that. And that keys into my main question about CMS, since you've been talking to them so much. Hey, this is like a political time bomb. This could, I mean, it already, Julie Appleby already broke it. I mean, if you think about all the horror stories that were summoned up in 2014, 15 about people who lost their pre-ACA plans and the hay that was made out of those, there are scholars now hostile to the ACA who are glomming on to the broker scandal and the fact that a lot of enrollments, who knows how many, are fraudulent. And it could just blow up in their faces. You would think that they would be terrified, that they would want to, act quick to shut this down. And from what you're saying, that doesn't seem to be the case. But a person who raised, to take this from the point of view of the client, politicians are going to start getting hold of people who, whose insurance has been screwed up, and there are a lot of them. So you would think there would be some urgency and they would see the political imperative. And if they don't, it's good. The odds of extending the enhanced subsidies after 2025 are not great in any case, but this is going to veto that if opponents can turn around and say, well, it's all just inducing fraud and it's people who shouldn't be enrolled anyway because they're faking their income. So, I just wonder, why isn't a political fire being lit under them?
I think it's fixing to start, Andrew. You're channeling my thoughts. You're in my head, and just know that I think some things are fixing to start. Because it can be used for advantage for some people and disadvantage for others.
So we've got like 5 minutes left, and I want to give Ronnell a chance to talk about if you're interested in helping her right in her own group as opposed to just sending her stuff. So tell us how we can join HAFA, what does a joining mean? Little plug on.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you so much for allowing me to speak to this group. This has been so much fun and you're amazing. I think we've become kindred spirits by meeting together. But Health Agents for America, HAFA, you simply go to our website, which is www.hafamerica.org, and click on membership. We have 3 levels. The first is presidential, if you'd want to sit on the board. Senatorial is the middle, where you get some more exposure On the website, we list your, that you sell in the different states that you sell, or just congressional, is $23 a month. So I created an association that everybody could afford. Faith, who's sleeping on the floor, says it's less than a dog bone. So it's something that we can all, get behind us and get involved. And then even if you're just thinking about HAFA, come to the conference in Washington, D.C., August 8th and 9th. CMS is going to be there. Anything you want to ask them, you can ask them. You'll be able to sit down and talk to them. They'll be walking around. It'll be really cool. But just know that I've dedicated to our industry. It's all I do 24/7. And I want to be there for y'all. So $23, less than a dog bone. HAFA, I'm gonna put the website in the chat box, I think.
Yes.
I might not, because I don't recognize, but it's www.hafthewordamerica.org. And I'd love to have y'all. Thank you, Christina.
And I did want to, Rosalind said, what if we start going to our local news and exposing CMS? Absolutely, because newspapers, and I mean, I know we love to hear about the conspiracy about how bad media is. It's not. We still have free American, people that can write things in America. And it wasn't until it started hitting the news that CMS finally started responding. Agents have been talking about this, and
Kaiser blew it up.
Yeah, so it's like, thank you, I was so excited when I saw them. We've had like what, two other ones.
Julie,
So
yeah,
yes, if you get your state
amazing.
involved, your national news, the more the news people start talking about it and making it a hot button, the faster this will get solved.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal is on it, people. If y'all want to talk to the Wall Street Journal or have clients that want to talk to the Wall Street Journal, they're ready to go crazy.
Especially clients,
right now.
Because CMS will try and paint it that it's agents fighting for their $20. If you've got a client who has been seriously hurt, right? I mean, we've seen the stories going through cancer treatment, got changed to a bronze plan that didn't even cover it in the middle of and they've already reached their max. If they are willing to talk, and you can say this will help others not go through what you did, CMS will not be able to ignore that. So absolutely, if you have any connections with reporters, do it. And just so you know, newspapers are what gets TV reporters happening. So I have friends that are newspaper reporters, and that's their biggest complaint. The TV media news places will read newspapers, find a good story, and then put it on the news that way. So even if it's just your local newspaper, you would be surprised how much that can change. So we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much. Reach out to Ronnell. You've seen her on Facebook. If you don't know how to reach her, just go to Facebook. Go to HAFA and join, become a member if you are free. What were those dates again? August
8th and 9th, Washington, D.C. at the Willard. It's where Abraham.
So there you go. I've been trying to figure out how I can go, because this is something that I think is important. So if you guys can do it, go. If you've got that time, be a part. Our voices are not pointless. Thank you so much, Ronnell. I am so glad that you were able to come on and that we got to meet, and we're definitely going to connect some more. Everybody else, have a wonderful 4th of July weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. I appreciate you jumping on and the questions. So thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful weekend.